Good evening, Warner Robins. Good evening, Middle Georgia. Can we just stand really fast? Can we just stand really quick? I want to just whisper a quick word of prayer and then we'll get started. Father, thank you for this time we have to share together as a community of people, your people. Thank you for allowing us to have this time that's going to both inform and transform. Thank you for our city officials. Thank you for this church. Thank you for all of these persons present who represent a unity of people trying to make a difference for the good of humanity. Would your Holy Spirit bless us now? This time we share together will be for your glory and for our good. In Jesus' name, amen. While you're standing, can you just say hello to everybody around you? Just say good evening to them. Speak to somebody. Just speak to somebody. Speak to somebody. Speak to somebody. We don't just want to talk to God, we want to speak to each other. Amen. Awesome, 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 awesome. All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. You may be seated. Tonight we are coming together as a community to bring awareness and to sound the alarm on a crisis in our community. This is not just a church event, this is a community event. And I first want to ask that you would just clap your hands for yourselves for being here tonight. Again, we're assembling tonight to sound the alarm on a crisis in our community. And the goal is by the time we disassemble from this place, we will be an empowered community. Being able to respond properly to this crisis that is happening in our community with regard to the opioid epidemic that has seriously and negatively affected Middle Georgia, particularly Houston County. So we have assembled a panel of persons to give us insight, information, instruction on how we as a community, both personally and collectively, can come together and to respond properly to this epidemic. So I want to take a second to introduce each one of them. To my far left is our Chief of Police, Chief Fisher. Can we clap it up for him tonight? Next to him is a very important man. I like him, but I don't like what he does. But he has to do what he does. He is the Houston County Coroner, Mr. James Williams. And we also want to congratulate him on being the Businessman of the Year as determined by the Perry Chamber of Commerce on January of 2020. Come on, we can clap it up for him for that. Next to him is our newly elected Sheriff of Houston County, Mr. Matthew Moulton. Far end here, she is the Certified Peer Specialist on Mental Health and Trauma. She gives leadership to the RAMP program, which stands for Results Anger Management Program, Mrs. Tanya Copperwaith. Come on, give me some love. All right. Yeah. These last two are fellowship's own. They're fellowship's own. She serves as the Executive Director of Counseling Services and Student Support for Central Georgia Tech College, and that's just one of several of her many hats. Would you all welcome our own Dr. Tanya Simmons-Lee. And the catalyst for tonight, he is the visionary proprietor and event coordinator for tonight's event. He gives leadership to Combat Bullying Tour, Reverend Willie Raines. Me, on the other hand, I'm so humbled to have you all here. I represent one of the baddest churches, the baddest church in Middle Georgia, Fellowship Bible Baptist Church, Pastor Tolan Morgan. Fellowship, can we just thank God for all of our guests who are present with us tonight? Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all for coming. All right, we want to get started with a video presentation. If you give your attention to the screens.
Stop. Don't pick up the pill. Before you pretend to perpetuate the present, I want to bring something to your attention. It's not going to pause the pain nor purge the persistent plague of your past. It's a palate pleasure posing as poison, passing to be this proliferating peace. Piece by piece, the promises are nothing more than a piled high, coating your throat in a silken lie. It'll pacify into a lullaby, you panic. The path's problematic. Plundering your soul into pure paranoia, stringing you into a powerless play puppet. The pills pledge to protect until they paint you pale, perishing passions you once had, keeping you in pill-popping patterns. Every dose is a step away from yourself, a slow erosion of the pieces that made you whole. Your reflection distorts in the glass, a stranger staring back with vacant eyes, telling you Percocet helps you grin. What a shame. That you found a friend in fentanyl, a fatal fix, a fool's gold in a needle, flipping the script for your future to fade far. Codings, a cruel crutch, a calm and cheat, cradling the chaos of cloaked cries, crushing someone's courage and comfort. Morphines, a mask, a mimicking mercy, attempted to mend the mind, but melting a momentary mirage, leaving misery where joy used to be. Heroin's a hollow hug, holding your hopes hostage, hiding the heavy hurt and hoarding heartache. Opium's an offering of an oasis, an escape, opening the eyes and mind, yet you're still blind, lost in the illusion of paradise. Do you get what I'm saying? All of these options are just a temporary ease to appease the appetite of pain, stealing you today to rob you of tomorrow. So don't pick up the pill. There's a world outside that still calls your name. Don't let this be your last chapter. There's still a story left to be written. Breathe in the space that's been waiting for you. You still have time to build something new.
Awesome. Awesome. I hope somebody was already encouraged by that in the room as we prepare to talk tonight as a community of people here in Middle Georgia. So I think what's important for us to start is that we start with some facts. So I'm going to ask our media team if you will put up the stat sheet about the deaths that have resulted from this crisis. Now, this stat sheet covers 2019 through 2023. I'm not for sure if the 2024. All right, the 2024 stats will be out August or September, but this data is still very important. So if we can show that stat sheet on the deaths in our area. All right, while they're pulling it up, I'll just summarize it for you. And as of 2023, I want you all to hear this. This is very important. Houston County had the highest amount of opioid-related, fentanyl-related deaths compared to other Middle Georgia counties, and it has increased since 2019. Our county had the highest number of opioid-related deaths. Also, as of 2023, Houston County had the second highest number of ER inpatient visits for the last 5 years. Over the last 5 to 6 years, the number of ER visits have been more females than males. And again, this information should be coming up shortly. As a matter of fact, this information was collected by the fire department, the Houston County Fire Department. Number 4, the numbers of deaths are highest among whites, second blacks, third multiracials, in that order, just in Houston County alone. Again, this number is comparative to a number of other middle Georgia, central Georgia counties. There's also another stat that is alarming to us. This opioid epidemic has affected people of ages under 1 and even above 80. We have on record in Houston County 9 children under the age of 1 have died. 177 children under the age of 5. Our largest age demographic that is affected the most are ages 25 to 29, and that number is at 233. Again, these numbers are as of 2023. And even those 60 and above, those numbers are well into the 200s. So this is a problem that is affecting multiple ethnicities, ranges of ages. It is not just a problem for one set of people. This is a problem for a variety of people in a variety of ages. So we thought it would be very, very important as church, as community, as constituents, as public officials, citizens, that we would need to come together and give some highlight to this and to try to address this with the intent of, again, both to inform and to transform. I have a set of questions. My goal is to try to keep this as close to an hour as possible because I want to respect your time. I have a set of questions that are very direct that we want to pose to the panel. But we did get a report tonight from the chief of police about some 2024 numbers that. Yes. So do you have those numbers, sir?
I do have our 2024 and our early 2025 numbers, which in their collective, when we look back to 2023, shows a progressive issue, if you will. We've been more aggressive in our enforcement, more focused in manner in our partnerships to address the problem, which has led to greater effectiveness in our actions. But in that, it's also shown a greater scope of the problem that exists within the community that I believe many are unaware of. They think that it does not touch them, but when some of these numbers are presented, I believe we as a collective whole will understand it comes much closer to your home than what you once thought before. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the 2023 numbers, the Warner Robins Police Department, our narcotics investigation unit, took 7 ounces thereabout of fentanyl off the street in 2023. When we came into 2024, they took 25 ounces. And when we factor the 25 ounces at the lethal dose of being 2 milligrams a dose, that equated to having the potential of causing 347,281 deaths. So you think about the Houston County population we have. Do you think that number touches close to home? So again, with our partnerships that we've had within our law enforcement community. We are one law enforcement community. You'll see us wearing different uniforms, driving different cars, working for different forms of government, but in our community, we are a one collective family, and that we're very blessed and fortunate of. But in the end of 2024, working with the DEA, with the Operation Overdrive, as well as the Warner Robins Police Department working with the Middle Georgia Gang Task Force and the Mulligan Drug Task Force, 2 separate cases were involved that generated significant numbers. Now, I told you in 2024 we had 25 ounces. That's a big number, right? So with the DEA case, there were 7.71 pounds of fentanyl that was seized. We're no longer talking about ounces. In this most recent case that you saw in the news, we seized over 67,000 pills with a combined weight of 15 pounds, a little over 15 pounds. So between these 2 cases, you can see that there's been some 22 plus pounds of fentanyl that have been seized, and most of which has been in pill format, totaling close to about 130,000 pills, dosages. Wow. So again, if you just draw the raw weight, and what I told you, 25 ounces being able to kill about 350,000 people, well, when I figured that out just upon the weight, what was seized out of these 2 cases was enough to potentially kill 5,033,250. So again, do we have a problem that's going to touch every facet of our community? The answer is yes. And again, we're very appreciative of the support that we have within our collective law enforcement community to partner with the Warner Robins Police Department to take these proactive steps in addressing these problems.
Thank you so much. I want to start with very basic questions just so that we can have a springboard. And any one of you, with regard to your experience in the community, your experience with relative to this issue, I want to start with a very, very basic question. What is fentanyl, and what is it originally intended to treat?
Dr. Morgan, I can start off with that. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is produced in labs, mainly in China and over in the Middle East. It does have a medical purpose. It's a Schedule II controlled substance under the classification schedule. It's used to treat pain, mainly like someone that suffers from chronic pain as a result of muscular sclerosis or something like that. They'll have the fentanyl duragesic patches that they can put on their arms or their back, and it's a time-release fentanyl dose that's used for therapeutic purposes. It's relatively cheap to obtain, and that's kind of why the problem started with fentanyl.
Anybody else care to elaborate on that? Thank you. Thank you. So, with regard to it being pretty much a pain control, painkiller kind of pain treatment, how has, and again, any one of you can give answer to this. Can you give us the origin of how this became a problem in our community? Kind of how did we get here? How did this start?
Well, it's a complex problem on a lot of points. You can look at it from the drug, or you can look at it from the behavioral health needs or addictions from the prescriptive. But when we look back to when these synthetic opioids came out into the market, they were originally presented as being a non-addictive means from the morphine-based drugs that were consumed as a medical treatment protocol. What we found over time, I think we can all accept, is that it is not a non-addictive opioid. And when it was being used in the pain management, again, you've had the abuse process that came through. When you deal with opioid-based drugs, heroin, morphine, drugs of that nature, it's no longer just a psychological addiction, but the body goes through a physiological addiction to the drug. So when the person that is addicted to it tries to come off of it, they're combating 2 aspects, the psychological addiction as well as their body having that physical craving for it. In and around 2016, law enforcement on the federal level got very proactive in regards to the registration of the prescriptions, if you will. So when you went to your pharmacist for your opioid medication, one pharmacist could tell through the database system whether or not you'd already received a prescription set to it. And that was done as a means to try to control the amount of these drugs that were being abused out in the community from people hunting doctors just to prescribe them for the pain medication. So by process, when that became more difficult for the consumer to get, the person that needed it, wanted it, the product point then came into the heroin. We saw a greater uptick into the heroin on the street market, and then followed through on the on the fentanyl, because it's a far cheaper product point. So the problem goes back some time. It's not one that just has recently hit us. And again, it's going to be a complex problem to solve. Again, this is the numbers what we presented here. That's just a tip of an iceberg of what we've pulled off the street. You know, you have far more out there, and you've got people that have that demand. So the only way we're going to be effective in combating this is, again, as in a partnership from both the behavioral health side and the medical side, addressing the addiction and the psychological reasons as to why people have the addiction and the need, as well as the enforcement of trying to, again, get off the street.
I believe that's a good transition to talk about the behavioral health side of this. So let's hear from the health-related professionals on that.
He's absolutely correct. We saw it started out with a number of drugs that were doing these things in the 90s, and then we moved up to heroin, and then we moved up heroin, then the prescriptive drugs, and then the opioids. And the prescriptive drugs and opioids, the one we're talking about now, fentanyl, happened within a 3-year time span where all of this took place. And it was because people were feeling things they didn't want to feel. They were having some experiences with depression, anxiety, even post-traumatic stress disorder, and they just didn't want to feel that way. And we have a certain population that may not have been feeling any of those things, but they wanted to feel better than what they were feeling. And so when you couple having a disorder as well as wanting to feel better because of, hey, do this, it'll make you feel like that. So we had some modeling of some of these drugs as well, and it just continued. He's correct in saying that the body, it becomes a part of your cell makeup. That's where the addiction comes, and it's hard for you to get off of it. It changes the chemical breakdown, the chemical makeup of your brain. It changes the chemical makeup of your cells and your cell membranes. So it's really difficult without twofold types of support. You're going to have family support when you're talking about someone who is experiencing any type of addiction. And you're going to have consistent and steady mental health support. And one of the two doesn't always flow when we're talking about addiction. Either the things have happened to the family to a point where they no longer want to engage with that family member, or that family member, it's not in a place to where they can make one conscious decision to get help and to maintain that help. So I'll kind of leave that there for a second.
I want to ask, more often than not, by the time someone is on the drugs, it's an aftermath, so to speak. So are there certain behaviors, are there certain signs and signals that we can see in our loved ones that might be suspicious? And if so, what are they?
Some of the signs you'll see, when we're talking about signs and symptoms, obviously signs are things that you can observe a person going through, such as their appearance. If they go from being tidy, neat, and all of a sudden they're disheveled and dirty, that's a sign. If their sleep habit changes, all of a sudden they had this normal rhythm of sleep, and now they're experiencing insomnia, where they're not going to sleep, or they're sleeping too much. It may not necessarily be a fentanyl or a stimulant, but it could be a depressant that they are involved in as well. And I know tonight is opioid specific, but I needed to make that separation. You would also notice some aggression in them, or some irritability that they may be experiencing as a result of having this exposure. It could be if they're young people, because we did talk about youth. Grades are falling, friends that they associate with change drastically. When you're engaging with them and trying to get those conversations you used to have, they're short or non-existent. They begin to isolate. So there are just a number of things that change. They may be involved with youth, things at the church. All of a sudden, they don't show up. They may be first at work. All of a sudden, now they're having attendance at work. So things like that where you see a drastic change in their personality, their appearance, as well as their attitude or
People
some
are
signs.
pretty much habitual, what you're saying.
Yes, they are.
And once their habits change extremely, that might be a red flag.
It is definitely a red flag.
All right, gotcha. Coroner, I want to ask, as you are seeing things come through your office, can you talk to us about possibly identifying the difference, what's an accidental situation versus what's an intentional situation? If someone was just, abusing versus someone who, like for example, with these children, we can safely presume there might have been an accident of some sort with children so young. How do you differentiate between the two and, talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing from your office?
Yes, sir. It can be difficult on some of the situations because we deal with the people that is using fentanyl and are having addictions to it, and also dealing with, I'm going to say, youth and young adults, a lot of times even on up in age, where in 2022 and 2023, where our numbers really doubled from 2020, was a lot of it was people that was addicted to pain medication, not fentanyl, Percocet, other stuff like that, and they were buying, once the doctor quit prescribing them the medicine, they went to the street and started buying off the street. Well, they were thinking they were buying Percocets when I can't think of the number of cases that I worked, that we worked, the agencies as well, worked where family members thought that it was Percocet pills, laying on the dresser, the nightstands when we would get on the scene, and it would be found out the pills that was made to look just like Percocets was pure fentanyl. That was going on here in Houston County. I don't have a number, but I know in 2023 our numbers went over 50 overdose deaths. And those are death-related overdoses. I believe the fire chief, I don't know if Chief Stoner's here tonight, but I think they responded to over 500 overdoses in that year, so 450 survived. So to go back, the question is, a lot of these people, no, they're not meaning to overdose and die. These are people that are, most of them, and I would say most of our cases are accidental overdoses. It's hard to prove that they meant to die from the overdose unless they leave behind something. But a majority of our cases are accidental. They did not mean to die.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of the, I guess, either the mistaken drugs or the look-alike drugs that might have been mistaken for one thing and was something else? Or are there other drugs that fall under the category of opioid, and if so, what are they?
Absolutely. I mean, some of them, of course, all the scenes that our office works is we're working with law enforcement, and I would say, and the sheriff and chief can both agree, I'm sure, that a lot of times we don't know that that's pure fentanyl until it's tested. It can look directly, I mean, just like a Percocet pill. And I'm using Percocet because that's what we were seeing a whole lot of in 2022 and 2023. And but yes, you wouldn't know the difference until you tested it. Other cases, we have had methamphetamine, cocaine that's been laced with fentanyl, mixed with it. Some of those people thought they were buying a bag of methamphetamine. We didn't know until we tested it, where it tested positive for fentanyl as well. And we
We have had a death. Matter of fact, the sheriff worked it with me when he was a narcotics investigator years ago, where there was nothing in the person's system other than fentanyl and marijuana. So the question gets asked, we don't know if it was laced with the fentanyl or if he took a pill with the fentanyl, but those were the only two drugs in his system. So that's a question that I get asked a lot is, well, he just uses marijuana, so no, it can't be with fentanyl. But I know areas around us, we definitely are seeing everything mixed with fentanyl, including marijuana.
So, Sheriff Moulton, with your knowledge of, kind of what's been going on in our county, what would you say to us that would be an intent, a strategy that your department is possibly working on or has worked on, a partner to how we can respond, from the sheriff's office with this?
It's just like this, what we're doing tonight, coming in and having a candid conversation and speaking honestly about what we are seeing in Houston County and how it is affecting our community. Because the fentanyl, marijuana, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, it doesn't abide by county limits or city limit signs. If it's in Warner Robins, it's in the unincorporated area of the county. If it's in Houston County, it's in Bibb County, it's in Fulton County, it's everywhere. It doesn't care if you're black, it doesn't care if you're white, it doesn't care if you're a year old or 83 years old. It doesn't care if you're rich, it doesn't care if you're poor. There are no demographics that we can say this drug affects this demographic the most, because the numbers just don't prove that. It doesn't show that at all. So events like this, partnering with Willie Raines, the coroner and I have been involved with him now for probably over a year now, getting this type of program started. We're going to go into the schools because the kids they're our future. That's who needs to hear this. That's who needs to see what we're dealing with on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Most of my career I spent as a narcotics investigator with the city of Warner Robins and the Houston County Sheriff's Office. And I've responded to calls for service where I've gotten to a house and the victim be laying there on the couch, on the floor, on the bed, wherever, with a syringe still stuck in their arm. And when the coroner gets there, the syringe is still stuck in the arm. Dr. Morgan, you asked earlier, is how can we tell if it's intentional or accidental? And the coroner answered that as truthfully as possible. We can't tell unless there's a note left behind, or through the investigation, family members discuss depression issues and things like that may have led to an intentional overdose. You can't convince me that a child under the age of 1 year old willfully took a tablet or touched a substance and died from it. So it's unintentional, I think, in most cases. How did we get here? You could go, the Houston County Sheriff's Office about 20 years ago conducted an investigation in a doctor out of Perry that was basically operating a pill mill. People were driving 8 to 12 hours away, coming to Perry, Georgia, and they would go in the front door of the doctor's office, and within about 15 or 20 minutes, they were coming out the back door of the doctor's office with a prescription for oxycodone or Oxycontin, Percocet, hydrocodone, any of the painkillers. They were going next door to a pharmacy. That pharmacy in Perry, Georgia, filled more Oxycontin tablets in 2003 than any other pharmacy in the state of Georgia combined. When the medical profession started cracking down on the physicians for writing these prescriptions, and the pharmacies got on board with the prescription management database, we started seeing those numbers go down. The problem was the patients were addicted to these opiates at the time. So they had to look for another alternative measure to get that high that they were looking for. And they turned to the street. At that time, we saw an upkick in heroin coming back into the middle Georgia area. And the heroin, we go to Atlanta, we can buy a kilo of heroin for about $54,000. That's a lot of money. I don't know that any of us could go to Atlanta right now and buy a kilo of heroin to bring back to sell. So how do we get to fentanyl? we get the fentanyl because fentanyl costs about $4,000 a kilo in Atlanta. So the drug cartels now are buying fentanyl out of China, having it shipped to Mexico. They're mixing it themselves into the drugs. And when they're mixing it, they're doing it in clandestine labs. They're not doing it in a pharmaceutical lab. They may be in a hut, a house, out in an open field by people who have no education. They have no idea the chemical compounds. They don't know what they're mixing. They're just putting a little bit here. It's kind of like how my grandmother used to cook sugar cookies. If a little bit is good, a lot's more. And they'll mix it and stir it up, and they're bringing it across our borders. And when it gets here, we worked a case in the Houston County Sheriff's Office. It was a house on North Davis Drive in Warner Robins, and the guy was operating a manual peel mill. He had a peel press that would press. If he worked 3 hours a day, he could produce 2,500 tablets a day, just working 3 hours a day. When we executed a search warrant on the house, we seized about 16 pounds of powder that was already mixed up, ready to go through the peel mill. We seized over 2,000 tablets that he was selling as MDMA or ecstasy. When we tested those tablets, it was pure fentanyl mixed with inositol or mannitol, some type of dietary supplement used as a binding agent to hold the pill together. He used food coloring to change the color and the appearance of the pill. So he was pressing them, and they would press like the Batman logo on it, or they would press them in the shape of Flintstone vitamins. Well, when I was a kid, I didn't know Flintstone vitamins were vitamins. I thought it was little jars of candy. So I'd eat 5 or 6 or 8 or 12. Well, if I'm a kid doing that, these kids are doing the exact same thing, but they're not getting Flintstone vitamins. They're getting fentanyl in pill form. Fentanyl's about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. So when you compound that with, you don't know if you're getting a little bit of fentanyl or a lot of fentanyl, these people are not intentionally overdosing. They're trying to, we call it chase the dragon. They're trying to get that next high. And unfortunately, not knowing the doses of what they're taking or actually knowing what they're taking, they're overdosing on it.
Thank you. That's information we definitely need to know. Amen. Ms. Tanya, you have a perspective about this that none of us have on this stage. And I want to give you, platform to talk to us about that from your unique perspective.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. So even though I'm educated and I have my degrees and stuff, the state of Georgia actually paid for me to go back to school and get that because I'm a person in long-term recovery. So I've been clean and sober since February 20th of 2017.
Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I do think it's important to take this moment. I know that we have several transitional homes that are here in town. I know that there's several of people in long-term recovery in the room. I just want to say that I will be outside. Please make sure that you're taking certain precautions and talking because some of these conversations can definitely be triggering. I think it's important to talk about the biology behind addiction and just real quick. The big part of our brain is our cerebral cortex. The little part is our neocortex. In the middle of that brain is a small part that's the size of an almond called the amygdala. That amygdala is our fight or flight response. And what happens is when we get addicted, we are synthetically jacking up our brain to feel good. And so even talking about it today in this conversation can make that amygdala inflamed. So it's very important to recognize that, to know. So if there are any thoughts, please make sure that you're communicating. I'll be outside. These are things that happen. But yes, sir, to answer your question, I was a good kid. I worked at Sunmark Community Bank for 10 years. I left work to have children. I had 2 children back to back and ended up having major back surgery. My girls were 1 and 2. And my back surgery worked. The second I woke up, they severed the nerve or something. But I haven't, God is so good, I haven't had any pain. However, I was addicted to pain pills. And within 5 years, I was homeless. I couldn't even speak to my children. I lost everything. And the animalistic levels that the addiction took me, and just to be real with you, I mean, you're on the streets. So you can only imagine the things that I had to do at times to have a couch to sleep on. God is so good. My life is so beautiful today. Like, it blows my mind. But I'll tell you, the way that the places that it takes you. The only reason my family's not here, I have one girl in boxing and one girl in softball right now. But my children even went through it. There was, like I said, no communication for 10 months. I had to, on February 19th, I made a deal with God. I said, if I live through today, I'll never look back, and I haven't. I didn't know what was in store for us, but I will tell you that there are a lot of contributing factors to addiction, from the ACE study, which is adverse childhood experience. You know, I was raised in that lifestyle. I'm a 6th-generation addict. The thing that we do different today in my family is we talk about it, right? It's on the forefront. My children are fully aware. We have a truth table. But then again, there's also a lot of work that goes. There's church. There's support network. This is things that you have to have, because I just had elbow surgery a few months ago. I had to take a pain pill. I was scared to death. I took accountability. I had Miss Susie, who's over our transitional drug, right? I needed to be drug screened, right? I know, just in case, and thank God I was good, but this is the real. If you don't think it'll happen to you, it'll happen to you. And it is scary. Again, I think it is important to understand that biology, because even at almost 9 years clean and sober, still to this day, there are times, my beautiful children are amazing, thank goodness, but they'll come home from school, tell me something good happened, and I literally have to remind myself, I'm supposed to be happy about this, because my brain was so synthetically releasing dopamine for so long. Now, I've seen CT scans. If you put a quote-unquote normal, someone who doesn't battle with addiction, you do a CT scan, you bring in pictures of their favorite food, their children, the cerebral cortex will light up. You bring in drug of choice for an addict, that neocortex will light up like a Christmas tree. We completely rewire our brain. Now, it does get better, but there are still times to this day that I have to remind myself, this is supposed to make me happy. That's just the truth of it.
Can we celebrate her victory for real, for real? Can we celebrate her victory? I love it. I love it. We celebrate your victory. Yeah.
And it is important. We have an amazing recovery community here. We really do. I travel a lot in the state of Georgia. I speak at the Capitol. I mean, we have RCOs, a recovery community organization, in every region. We stay very connected. We have Narcotics Anonymous meetings. We have Alcoholics Anonymous. We have Celebrate Recovery, thank goodness, Southside, the Assembly. And it's very important that we have that combined network to be able to lean in on each other and to just be real about things. But we do. We really have a very good community here. It's just not talked about enough, which is why we're here.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. I want to.
Pastor,
Yes.
if I may, she opened up a conversation that I think will support this conversation. When we're talking, you heard me earlier say there are some people who get engaged with substances because of particularly 3 different areas: anxiety, depression, and the pain. But then there's a whole nother reason that we never talk about, and that's the trauma that we experience in our lives. And the study she mentioned was ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. Now, that survey started out dealing with weight loss, but it highlighted the fact that when someone is triggered by an event that happened to them that was problematic, and I try not to throw the word trauma around because we don't want it to use its value. Because you'll say, oh, I was traumatized. Well, trauma for you is going to be trauma for me. So let's just put that out there. But when you do have these traumas, you do lend yourself to more addictive behaviors, whether it's food, drug, alcohol, or any of these other things. So as we continue to have this conversation, I want to give everyone a perspective. We did mention children, and that's where Willie Raines comes in, because he goes into the schools. As a former administrator for 12 years, where Bo was my SRO, and we did amazing things there, we realize that these kids come to school with us because of how their parents live. Children come to school to us because of how their parents live. No one is condemning parenting, but we are saying that parenting cannot be the way I was parented. My mother threw a shoe at me.
And that was all. That
Right?
was it.
That was it. If I didn't do what she needed me to do, that shoe came and it was coming.
it.
We can't throw a shoe at a child today.
Right. That's fact.
Here's why I say that. It's not for debate, but listen to why I say that. Because the children today are not the children of yesterday. They are very sensitive to how they feel, and their feelings, while they may not be reliable, they are valid to them. And if they feel dismissed, if they feel hurt, if they feel unseen, if they feel like something has happened that should not have happened to them, they go into this internal place, and then they start internalizing all of these negative things, would lend themselves to the experimentation of drugs, alcohol, substance, promiscuity, etc., food, because they're trying to feel better about themselves based off of what they've either observed, what they have experienced, or what they have been told. So I just want to put that perspective there.
No, that was important, because I was going to ask either one of you to talk about some precursors that lead to this type of behavior, and you've already helped us in that area, because that had been a chronic question even amongst in our ministry of trying to figure out, even in our youth ministry, we know what the problem is, but what leads to it, because we want to be able to intercept that gap. This type of behavior leads to this type of behavior, which leads to this type of behavior. All right, so we need to intercept here so that it doesn't hopefully get to there.
We have to teach each other how to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I can't raise my voice and at you when I'm really upset with somebody else. And then I'm going to do it to you because you're the least likely person to come back at me. But you just got everything somebody else had, and now you feel bad and I feel better because I released it. But I wasn't responsible with my words. Words do hurt.
Absolutely.
And it's not just bullying in school. It's that whole self-image. It's a lot that happens. And I know as a parent, our lives are busy. But we also have to slow down, because the child is not going to tell you the way you think or expect them to tell you. Those signs and symptoms I talked about earlier, that's what you'll see, but you got to slow down and be open to seeing it before it gets too far gone.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Morgan, you brought up a good point when you said we know what the problem is, right? The problem is drugs.
Right.
All right. We can also explain how.
Right.
You know, I can show you the tracks. The chief can show you the tracks of the drugs, how they get from where they're made to the streets here in Houston County. The question that I've always had through my time as an investigator is the why. And Tanya kind of hit on that earlier. And through my training and research, I've learned that I looked at why addiction happens. You know, what causes that? Because, Tanya, I'm sure you didn't take that first pill knowing that you were going to be homeless in 5 years. None of us do that. So why does addiction occur? Well, our brain has a state that's called homeostasis, right? It's a baseline. Imagine a horizontal line about 4 feet above this desk or this stage that we're standing on, right? Okay, when you take that first dose of cocaine, of fentanyl, of marijuana, or whatever, it produces that euphoric feeling that you're looking for, right? So if you can imagine that baseline of homeostasis, it takes you up here. That's the high. You feel good, right? Okay, so when you get to the high, when you come down off of that, it produces an equal and opposite reaction to the high. So remember, homeostasis is here. You get high, you come down in equal distance, and now go in the opposite direction. So now you're below homeostasis. You're below what is feeling normal. So the next dose you take, it brings you back up to what your baseline normal was. And that produces the high that you're looking for. All right, when you come down off of that, it produces an equal and opposite reaction. So you come down an equal amount and go down an opposite direction, right? So now you're way down here when the baseline for what was normal to you is up here. So now to get back to just feeling normal, what do you have to do? Increase the drug, right? You got to take more. You take more of a more potent drug. Now marijuana's not doing it, so you turn to cocaine. And then you do that, and cocaine is not enough. So when people say that marijuana is, it's just a plant, it's just a weed, whatever, it's a gateway drug that leads to more serious drugs.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be treated that way. So when we talk about homeostasis, that's how addiction occurs, I believe, through the training and the research I've done, and we call it chasing the dragon. I mentioned that earlier. You never get back to what was normal because of the equal and opposite reactions that you have every time you take a dose.
Thank you so very much. Listen, with our time left, everybody can't have a question, but we want to at least give a short amount of time. If anyone has a question in the audience for anyone on the panel or just a general question, I would ask that you would step to this center podium. If you have a question, just come as quickly as you can and come, sir. And I want to make sure we're asking questions because we want to be respectful of everyone's time and give our panel time to respond as well. If you'd like to give us your name, you're more than welcome. If not, that's fine too.
Fine. My name is Pastor Harrington of No Limit Baptist Church. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for what you're doing and for the panel. My question is, I served as a nurse for 20-something years, and my question was, I would like for you to tell these people, dealing with fentanyl, how is it absorbed, and how is it so easily absorbed, and how is that such a problem for people? If you don't mind, thank you.
Anyone?
Yeah, fentanyl, it can be absorbed in many different ways. It can be snorted. It can be intravenously through an IV or needle into a vein, transdermal. It can be on your skin and absorb into your skin that way. There's a video on YouTube. If you'll Google it, Ohio State Trooper dies from fentanyl exposure. He was on a traffic stop on the interstate and was searching a vehicle. He got down on his knee on the passenger side of the car, leaned over the front seat, looked underneath the seat, stood up, and as he walked back to his patrol car, you see him glance down at his uniform, and he does this. And you see a little bit of powder come off his uniform. He takes 3 steps and falls face first on the ground and dies from fentanyl exposure. It was a derivative of fentanyl called carfentanil, and it's about 1,000 times more potent than morphine. So transdermally, through the skin, it can be inhaled, it can be smoked. If you sprinkle it on marijuana and smoke it, you're inhaling it that way. Snorted through the nose. It can be drank with drinks. It comes in liquid form as well. We had a heat team in Houston County years ago, and we were working a case on the interstate. We got a call from Peach County 911 that there was a vehicle driving down 75 southbound and was going from guardrail to guardrail, hitting the guardrails, and they were going about 20 miles an hour. I got the car stopped, and when I got up to it, it was an older lady driving, and she had a big wad in the cheek of her mouth. And when I got into her mouth and looked at it, she had 6 of the Duralgesic fentanyl patches wadded down in her mouth. And when I tell you she was high, she was high. She had no business being out there driving. So if the person wants the drug, they can take it in any way. That was a great question, Pastor. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Nowadays, fentanyl is in everything. The vapes now, a lot of our kids are vaping now that has fentanyl in it. Matter of fact, kids are now doing edibles that they're ordering offline, and they look like Doritos, Oreos, Capri Sun, Jolly Ranchers. So please tell your kids not to take any snacks from anyone. And a lot of this stuff is being laced now with fentanyl, and that's what we're seeing in the schools, and high level of THC by itself. Back in the old days when I was young, good weed now, it was by good weed. It was only about 8% THC. Now you're looking at 80 because of the GMO weed. That's why when you pull up, you smell weed from somebody else and you getting high from that, you know what I mean, it's right there in that car. So now you have a high level of THC. And so now they ordering these edibles that have high level of THC. So they eating 2 to 3 chips. Matter of fact, there was a young lady at one of the schools, I don't want to name the name of the school. One of the schools, she was taking edibles and she just spazzed out, just went crazy. So they had to call the ambulance for her. And so this is what we are seeing now. Our kids your kids are ordering them offline. So you have to make sure, everybody pretty much have a ring now. If a package came to your house, you should be able to see that and find out what came to your house, because now what kids are doing, they're ordering it offline. And they're using their Cash App cards to order it. And a lot of times you don't even know because it looked like Doritos. It looked like Oreos. So you have to watch out for that kind of stuff. And that's it, is the problem in our schools today, because now we have this behavioral problem now because high level of THC has caused psychotic behavior. And so now our young people are reacting and not acting. So reacting is, if I hit you back. Or I take a gun out and shoot you. And so what we're finding, that when they come down, they don't realize what they have done until now they're in prison. They're behind bars. Now they're getting 15 to 30 years. Like I said, when myself and Smooth, we went to Montgomery, Alabama, one of the largest youth detention facility. And they're there from the age of 12 to 17 years old. 12 to 17 years old. And you went in that facility, you saw every nationality. I saw a little Indian little boy. I'm like, what are you doing here, Patel? And but these kids was, I'm serious, man. Smooth was like, it was just really weird to see that. I was just, what do you did? From the age of 12 to 17, at one facility, you have 2 to 5 felony accounts. These kids are rapists. They were attempted murderers. They were bank robbers, armed robbers. And the other facility is the same age, but they're there for only to be housed. They're there for about 15. They're housed till they're 17 years old. Then they have to go to prison. Their prison sentence are life, 15 to 30 years. And I'm talking about, it is packed.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for responding. We got some more questions. Young man got a question. Young lady got a question.
Hey, Lane. My name is Lane Patrick, and I am 7 years old. I am in 2nd grade, and I would like to know what is a drug and about kids.
What is a drug?
Yes, he heard candy and drugs, and he wants to know what is a drug. So from a child's perspective, my son is not shy, and he has lots of questions, and he really wants to know the answer to how kids will know it's a drug and not candy.
Got it. That's a good question.
Ooh, that's a powerful question.
Well, that's a good question. And in today's day and age, it's a lot more difficult for somebody to truly know, especially where, as what was stated earlier, some of these drugs are made to look like candy. So what I would tell you as a child or somebody that's young is, don't take things from people you don't know, and rely upon your parents or guardian to ensure what you're getting is what you think it's supposed to be. But when you're taking it from a stranger, you will not know. And that goes for even the adults as you're looking at things. Because again, a lot of these overdose matters that we dealt with, people thought it was something other than what they were actually taking.
And it's always a good practice to inquire about where something comes from. This is not talking about anybody in this space, but sometimes you can go to someone's house who you do know, and they may have something in their space. So always inquire before you just take something and eat it or drink it or whatever, because you never know.
There has also been an increase kids taking candy to school, and the whole classroom is high because they took their parents' edible. and they thought it was candy. This has happened in the Middle Georgia area. This is a very serious thing. And also now, because everybody think weed is okay and edibles, so now they're having edible parties. Adults having edible parties where they have chefs now that come in and prepare meals with THC in it, and they having cookouts with edibles. And so this has become a craze. And also now with the music that is being produced that is promoting perks, taking perks, mollies, you hear the songs, and so now it seems like it's cool. But now even them, they are dying. Like Rich Homie died, which was DJ Smooth friend, died from an overdose of fentanyl. He got a fake pill. He didn't know it looked fake because they all look the same. They make fake pill look real. And so this man lost his life to overdose of fentanyl because just to get high.
Next question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sharice. I'm 43 years old, and I've been dealing with my mom all of my adult life. So my being addicted to drugs is across the board with that. But my question is, what advice do you guys give to the family or friends or their support when you have tried the rehabs, they leave and they just refuse to get off the drug? And this has been, like I said, all of 20 years. What do I do at that point?
Yeah, so this is going to sound a little harsh, but I tell people all the time, you have to get out of God's way, right? You have to turn them over to God. We don't realize when the enabling is preventing them from hitting that rock bottom, and unfortunately, it's so scary. I was personally in that with my oldest stepson. We cut it off, nothing, and 2 weeks later, he killed himself. He was 23. So you never know what that rock bottom is. However, we're not God, and so we have to step aside and get out of God's way and turn them over. Pray for them every day. But you can't be codependent and lose self and family trying to, and I'm so sorry you're going through that. My mother's been clean for 12 years, thank God, but I was raised in it, and I swore I would be nothing like it, and when things got tough, it's all I knew. So I'm proud of you for not being there, but I'm sorry that you're going through that.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, I'm on the right path.
That's right.
Yeah, part of the codependency means you don't have boundaries.
That's
You
right.
need them to be. And so putting boundaries in place will help you to detach from that dependency of having, and it sounds really crazy, but having an identity through their problem.
Right, absolutely.
The young lady that's last in line will be the last one with the questions tonight.
Hello, I'm Cedric Logan. With respect for your time, my question is, what are some effective strategies in preventing opioid use, and how can we as a community work together in implementing these strategies effectively?
I think right now is what we're doing now. Like I said, the coroner came to me about 2 years ago, and him and Moulton came to me about 2 years ago with this problem of the overdose. And so we developed this program. The program is actually called Choices, that deals with the overdose of fentanyl and kids making bad choices. And so we developed it probably about a year ago. We finalized it. The mayor got behind us on it. And so we're trying to expose it. And so when the opioid companies got sued for $50 billion, and so when Houston County got the money, we have Chairman Perdue contacted the coroner, what can we do? And the coroner was like, hey, Reigns is already in the schools, and we can be affected that way to reach the young people. He has a platform. And so we signed a contract with them to do all the schools in Houston County and do these events here. We're doing several events here just to have this conversation, so it starts with right there.
To answer your question, the first strategy is what we're doing tonight. That's the first strategy.
It's definitely, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, it's definitely, and I know it sounds cliche, but it starts at home, right? So just I understand we're busy. Like I said, I have kids spread out everywhere right now, but Eat at the dinner table. Even if it's 3 or 4 nights a week, eat at the dinner table. No phones, no TV, and talk. We have what we call a truth table. Our children can say anything that they've done wrong, any questions. They leave it there. They cannot get in trouble. We don't talk about it once we get up, but if there's questions, I got a tattoo, and of course it got brought up, did you use needles? And of course I had to, and it wasn't brought up again. We have a truth table where we talk about these things. We have a peer support group where the girls can lean in on each other. We need to talk more about it. We tried to hold I'll say my I statements. I tried to hold some of this information back because I felt like I didn't want to take my children's childhood. But believe me, I would rather tell them than the kids at school tell them, and they find out a harder way. So eat at a table.
That's a very, very critical strategy within itself to literally restore communication at home. That's really what that,
Effective communication. Yeah, assertive communication. Don't be passive, don't be aggressive. Assertive, use I statements, sit them at a table, give them a safe place to talk and talk.
Because if I don't talk, I withdraw. And when I withdraw, I'm looking for coping mechanisms. So we can really just restore communication, restore family, restore the strength of just talking to each other. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Destiny Lyons. I am 11 years old and I am in 5th grade. I just want to know what the term laced means. I looked it up on Google, but I still didn't understand it.
Okay.
So lacing means to take something and mix it with it, to coat it. Sit there and think of like confectionery sugar that might be sprinkled up on top of something else. So it's enhancing something that is already there. Like within the drug culture is what we spoke about earlier, where fentanyl is being mixed in with a lot of other drugs as well. It's being mixed with it to enhance or change the type of high that the person is getting at that time. So again, that's in definition of what it means to be laced onto that with the narcotics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just phenomenal. Thank y'all guys so much. God bless y'all. Thank you so much, Pastor. My name is Dr. Bridget Moore. I'm a pharmacist. I work on base. And I just appreciate this conversation because when I tell you people are afraid, Tammy, to talk about this at home, and that was the question that I had for people in the audience here and for everyone on the panel, is how do you segue to talk to your kids about drugs? Because they don't want to talk about it in the church unless it's here at Fellowship. Thank God for you. But they don't want to talk about it. So what's a good, I don't know if people out here have any suggestions or you do on the panel, but that's something we need to know to have a segue.
That's a good question. Like, how do you talk about it? That's a good question.
I think one of the ways to talk about it is just to talk about it. Just bring it up and talk about it. If you're in that session to where you're sitting and you're writing, I used to have difficult conversations with my children riding to and from school. They weren't looking at me. I wasn't looking at them because I was driving. And it took some of the pressure off of it. I don't know if children go, ride. That was one way. Another way is to kind of get them engaged. Go for a walk in the community because you want to be healthy anyway. Take them to the gym with you. Get them, as you started out, try to make it as non-threatening as possible. But if it's something you've seen and you need to address it, just address it. But there are other ways that you kind of want to walk up on something. It can be a commercial. And I'll say, what you think about that? And then they turn like, oh my God, did she really just slip this in on me? I did. I did. So, just talk about it, because a lot of the commercials will give you a number of prompts. They don't do commercials the way they used to. They just out there in the open. So use that. Tanya may have some different ones, but for me, just have the conversation. There's no easy way to save your child's life if you think they're about to lose it.
Yeah, to build off what she's saying, talk about it. Parents in here, if you don't talk to your kids about it, somebody will. So who do you want to give them the information to keep them safe?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Anaya. I'm a sophomore at CSU in Clemson State. And I was wondering, how do authorities test for fentanyl contamination in consumer goods?
How do authorities test for fentanyl in consumer goods? That's an
There's
intelligent
technology
question.
out there now that we use. We've got one device that's called a TrueNarc device, and it uses laser spectrometry So our investigators or our deputies don't actually have to handle the actual product. You can hold the bag up and use a laser spectrometer, and it will shoot through the bag. And it's got a library of different chemicals built into the device. And based on the light waves that come back, it can positively identify what that substance is. So we use a tactic ID. We also use a TrueNarc to do the field testing. Once the field testing is completed, it's sent to the crime lab at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and they go through more detail. They use a gas chromatograph and more laser spectrometry, and they'll actually come out with the chemical compounds of that substance and tell you how much of each substance is in it. Because like we said earlier, you're seeing fentanyl mixed with methamphetamine. So when we do the test using a TrueNarc or a tactic ID, it's going to show a meth fentanyl compound. Well, I can't tell you how much is of each in that substance, but the crime lab can do that through their detailed testing.
Whenever it comes to the streets, whenever it comes to drug use within the streets, and not necessarily with consumer goods, but there is a huge part, there's 7 different categories, 4 huge categories, but 7 different categories on the opioid settlement funds and what it can be spent on. There's a huge part of that that's harm reduction. And so there are fentanyl test strips. So there's fentanyl test strips and, of course, Narcan, but I mean, you can get a box of 1,000 fentanyl test strips for absolutely free and literally just leave them in the bathroom at the Zaxby's, or, you know what I mean? So there are ways to get, like if you know a family or anything, you know, that you can leave them. We make care packages for the homeless. We make sure that they're in there. So there are these simple care strips that you can use as well, but not necessarily for consumer goods. But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Pastor, I wanted to kind of be clear about something. I think Sheriff Moulton and I are on the same team. When we were talking about the why, he was speaking very passionately about the why for the addiction. And I was speaking very passionately about how we get to taking the pill, right? Because he was speaking more about the biological things that happen for the addiction. And I was speaking more from the emotional side of why we even take the pill, which goes to what Brianna talked about in her beautiful poetic display. And so when you leave here, please understand that addiction, taking the pill, it deals with you emotionally, it deals with you physically, and it deals with you, in all these other places and spaces. But there are 2 whys to this issue. One is the addiction, but the very first one is, how did we get to the addiction? You heard Tanya talk about, had she not had some of those adverse childhood experiences, her ability to withstand that would have been a lot better for her, and she would not have had to go down some of those roads that she went down. That's talking to the emotional part of why she continued to seek that pill. But then when you take it, that's what Sheriff Moulton was talking about, that biological or chemical realignment. Are we clear? Awesome.
All right. Man, you about to get me in trouble, bro.
Now, there's a lot of things that you all have touched on and people have touched on, but the real crossroads is the people who your kids are hanging out with.
absolutely.
You have got to pay attention who has influence on your kids. That kid that your daughter doesn't talk to or your son doesn't talk to, and you tell them, hey, look, we're going somewhere, and they nut up, you need to find out what influence that kid has over your child and why. If they feel they need to dress like them, cut their hair like them, be where they are, even if they're at their house, you need to show up and figure out what's going on, because the pill and the ideal comes from somewhere else if it didn't come from you. So that's the road.
That's good. Thank you. Can we appreciate all of our panel tonight? Come on, can we appreciate all of our panel guests tonight? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. We only got 2 things left to do, and then we're going to dismiss. First and foremost, we have tried to discuss a range of resources and information to help us as a community to respond for our good with this effort. But I would be remiss if I did not share with you one resource that is very, very critical to life itself, and that's a relationship with Jesus Christ. All of these persons who sit here together today, you have heard off and on church, Christ, relationship, getting yourself grounded in a good community. And one of the things that I know about this area since I've been here is that there are strong, Christ-centered, Bible-believing, Spirit-filled churches where you can grow and go in God and be grounded in the faith and be grounded in an atmosphere that helps to serve for your good. So if there's anybody here tonight that does not, have not had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm telling you, that's where it starts. You still need to do the work. You still need to have the proper resources. You still need to have the proper information. But being grounded in the Lord Jesus Christ is where it starts. So if there's anybody here tonight that says, Pastor, that's not me, but I want to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that process is simple. Number one, you've got to be willing to submit to his lordship. Number two, you've got to be willing to believe by faith that he died for you and died as you. That he who knew no sin became sin, that you may become the righteousness of God. And number three, you've got to be willing to believe by faith that after being dead for 3 days, God raised him from the dead. If you're willing to believe those three things in your heart and confess that out of your mouth, the Bible says you shall be saved. So here's what that means. Your life is not about to be perfect, but he'll change you so you can go change your life. So I pray that somebody here will consider Christ in all of this and consider getting grounded in a Bible-believing, Christ-centered, Spirit-filled church. There are a number around here. Of course, we would love to have you to be here at our church, but if that's not your choice, get connected to the body of Christ so you can have a base, a positive atmosphere in the Lord. All right? That's the first thing. The second thing is Willie Raines is going to come. He's going to acknowledge some of our special guests as well as lead us into our giveaway giving.
Well, again, we have Chairman Perdue. I want to thank you if you'll stand and just let everybody see you. He's the reason why we're doing the school assemblies now, the whole opioid, that whole emblem logo was made by our very own Quincy Hall. So we had to develop a whole program for this. There was no program. There was no one else doing school assemblies or reaching the young people. So we developed a whole program for that. So I thank God for him. I thank God for the coroner and the sheriff. They're coming together. And I thank God for Tanya Lee. She was part of my program that keep me grounded. So she go in every school that never goes and through technology. And so I just want to thank him. I thank my videographer, all those videos that you see. This guy right here, producer, he does movies and everything, because now we got to reach kids. They're right here, and it costs a lot of money to do what we do. And so he produced it. Matter of fact, Brianna Richardson, thank her, she is part of our program. They're doing spoken words. He produced that, and so we just thank God that. Got my DJ here 15 years, DJ Smooth. We've been rocking for 15 years. Miss Dora Williams, she the CFO, and I can't say enough about her because we lost our status. We have somebody stealing money from us, and she found it, and it cost me a lot of money. But I thank God for her. I thank God for her. And one of my number one supporters, I thank God for the mayor. She's the reason why we did the choices. And also we received a grant from the city for $65,000 to do the schools that we have produced. But one of my number one supporters here, I have two of them, but one of them is not here. Older band, Stephen Davidson, sponsored my program. Been doing it for years. But my number one sponsor here, we've been sponsoring me for almost 15 more years. Dr. Johnny L. Gayton. And this man had given me hundreds of thousands of dollars to do programs here. He believed in us, and we're going to do a suicide prevention thing in September. It's going to be huge. It'll be a car show. It'll be everything, 3-on-3 basketball. We're going to have celebrities here. That's coming in September the 13th. He want to do that, so he does that every year, put money towards that. So I just really want to say thank you for them, and let's give away some money and stuff, okay? If you got did everyone get a ticket when you came in? A piece of paper. Open up that piece of paper. If you have the number 45, I want you to stand up. You got 45, okay. What you're getting is the first line of defense to opioids. Somebody having addiction is Narcan. That's the first line of defense to that. And so that's what they're giving right now. So if you got 45, hold your ticket out. Hold up. Also, at my table in the back, I think I have about 6 or 7 small shirts. Now, you know you don't wear small. Go back there. You know you don't wear small. I'm just telling you. That's probably about a kid size. I have probably about 3 opioid shirts back there left. So you can go back to my table and see her back there and get that. We also have suicide prevention cards because also this leads to a lot of suicide. Matter of fact, while we was doing a school assembly, he had to leave. So if he left, you know, that means that's not good. And then also, the other day we was doing a school assembly and we got a call that a young lady had overdosed at a high school while we were doing a school. So it is a real serious area. Still got 2 over here. Now, for the real money. Everybody say real money. Anybody need some money? If you have on your ticket John 3:16, stand up. That's 1. That's 2. There got to be another. That's 3. Each one of you will get $500. I'm talking about she counted out $500 cash. Yeah, check them tickets real good now. In God we trust, but we ain't trust. Check those tickets. And we have over here and one right here, $500. On the behalf of our organization, we want to give back to you guys. And every event we do, we always do this. And Dr. Gayton called me. He said, do you need some more money to give away? I said, no, we're okay on that. So hold on to that money. I'm going to need that later. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that money. All right. The last $500, I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you, Pastor, for allowing this to happen. And this is the first. Now, Pastor, we have some more we have to do in the city. So you started this out, you got to finish it. So we're going to be at different locations, but we need you on the panel to facilitate. Will you be willing to do that? We'll work around your schedule. Yes, and so we'll have to do these. I think with Purdue, we got to do several more of these. I think we're going to do them at Southside, am I right? And I think at Hope Church, like that. So there'll be several, and we might come back and do another one because there's a round 2 to this, but we'll talk about that. And also, we go from event to event. July the 23rd is going to be youth right here. Here is going to be an event. We're actually going to do the Choices Assembly on the 23rd, and we're going to give away 3 shopping sprees for the kids coming. We want kids from all over. It's about the kingdom. Pastor said we're going to take over the city. And we can't take over the city being broke. We got to give something. So let me share something with you. It takes real money to reach real people in a real world. If you don't believe it, when you go home, you get your bill, your light bill, and put on there, I'm praying for you, and send it back in. Don't send no money, don't send no check. It's been a proven fact in 2 weeks you'll be praying in the dark. Real money to reach real people. Well, you say, well, how much is it worth it? If that was your child, was it worth it? I had a young man call me from a school. He told me, Smooth was there. He told me, he said, man, thank you for coming. He said, my mother a year ago died of an overdose of fentanyl smoking weed. And he began to actually do drugs and began to act out because of their behavior. I went to his school. I spoke in his school. He said, man, after you spoke, I knew what made the difference in your life. So I can't mention Jesus in schools, but how many know I carry him with me? An anointing still destroy yokes and lift burdens. And I remember talking to him after, and I told him about my faith, and right there, that young man gave his life to the Lord. And he told his, he said this, he said, man, I want to be like you. I want to be a motivational speaker, and I want to be big like you and a preacher. I told him, you might get 2 of them. I don't know about the third one. But that's sort of some of the results that we're seeing. We're out here saving lives because people ask me, why do you do? I've been doing this for 26 years. 26 years I crisscrossed this country. And I fought for youth all over the world. I literally speak to millions of people. And I want to do a shout out, thank God for Janet and Ray Clark. They're a part of my team. You'll never see them. They do all of my overseas stuff. 2 years ago, we was in South Africa doing, they did 75 schools over there. They were there for a month doing schools over there. So I just want to thank you, Ray. I know you're looking. And I just want to thank them because I don't travel out of the country no more. I'm staying right here in America till things get right. But I just want to say thank you for that. And I thank God for you. Look out for the event. See me at my table back there. We have some shirts. And again, thank you, and we love you.
Hold on. Wait. And I just want to say something real quick. We do have a recovery rally where Kevin Tanner, who's over opioid settlement, will be there to speak. Also, Jeff Breedlove, who is with Georgia Council on Substance Abuse and Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities on March 29th at the Perry Fairgrounds. So we would love to see y'all there. And also, again, I will say, I know there's a lot of people in recovery in the room. If you were triggered by anything that was on this stage and discussed, please grab me, grab anybody, make accountability. We will pray over you. We will lay hands. We will do what we got to do. But please talk about it before you leave, okay? Y'all have a blessed evening.
Thank you so very much. Everyone standing, everyone standing. Those of you that have tables, if you like to go in the back to your table, you can do that now. While they're doing that, I want to bring something to everybody's attention. And I think we all need to partner on this. Anybody familiar with April 20th? April 20th is Weed Day. Y'all didn't want to admit you knew that in church. I understand. But just consider with me, people, if the nation is giving green light for people to smoke weed on that day, just imagine how the enemy can manipulate that. Right? So I want us to partner together to work against that, because somebody's life can be on the line. It could be your family member. Somebody's life can be on the line, just trying to, fit into the culture and fit into the day. And that's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want people's lives to be saved and spared and not be gambled with just to try to fit into the culture, all right? So let's work against that. Let's work against that. I want to thank everybody from our community, everybody from Middle Georgia, everybody from Warner Robins, everybody from Houston County, our guests. Thank you, fellowship, for being here tonight. welcoming our guests. Our news was here tonight. Thank you, sir. Come on, give it up for our local news. Our church media, security, everybody, thank you all for being here. This was a success, and please, ma'am, and please, sir, let's continue this conversation. Let's do this more often so that we can be stronger as a community together. Would you just look this way and let me ask the Lord's blessings on you? The Lord God bless and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift the light of his countenance on you and give you peace. May he bless you in the city. May he bless you in the field. May he bless your going out and your coming in. May the favor of God grant you what money cannot buy you. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night. God bless you. Everybody have a great evening.